Starting, all attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Gladys, and I will be moderating today's softball summit on behalf of USA Softball Metro Detroit Board. Thank you for joining us this morning. We hope that you're able to take information that's shared today back to your communities, not only for softball programming, but everything you guys do with your programs there. So we're going to have a presentation today. Just so everybody knows, the presentation was approved for 0.2 CEUs. So we'll get to the CEU part of it in a moment. Quick agenda on what we will be covering today. So the main focus of the program will be to talk about COVID-19 and the implications that it affects all of us from the softball world, but again, even you can take it to the local programming that you guys do in your community. Few quick things before we do get started. Feel free to use the chat function. So if you have a question during the presentation, or even if you're doing something that is different from what we're sharing, we do want to hear it, and so the other panelists and people attending can get that. So please share it in the chat function, and we will bring it to, we'll look at it and be able to share it with everybody. So if there's a best practice you're doing in your community, we want to know about it too. As I said, the CEUs, or they get approved for 0.2 CEUs. So feel free to, at the end of the presentation, my email address will be up there. It will be able, if you just send me an email that you need CEUs, I will go ahead and email you the form at the end of the presentation. That will be your proof that you attended and that you can get credit for it. So, so we are, like I said, going to talk about COVID-19. We'll talk about a local app that is available for you guys to use to collect scores and communicate with staff as well as participants. USA Softball benefits for your leagues. And then at the end, we'll do a roundtable question and answer for you. So moving on. So on the panel today, as I said myself, I will be moderating it. We have Stu Alderman, who is the commissioner for USA Softball in Metro Detroit. Scott Mercer, who's our associate commissioner. John Jonathan, who's our umpire-in-chief. Denny Troshak, he represents our JO program. Unfortunately, Derek Smith was not able to join us. He may join us later on. John Fidel, a board member from the city of Royal Oak. Troy Nowotny, board member from Sterling Heights, and Kirby Rochester, also from Sterling Heights. So they're the ones that will be sharing stuff with you. And I also forgot Dan Sullivan from Oxford, board member, will also be sharing stuff. So Stu, do you want to take over and discuss some of the partnerships that we have with USA Softball in Metro Detroit?
Yes, just real quick. We have two invaluable partnerships, and the one is with MParks. We thank them for even helping us put on this webinar today. Our relationship with MParks has been going on for more than 30 years. So without MParks, we are all parks and recreation professionals, and without MParks, we probably wouldn't be where we're at right now. So we do thank them. And the other one is the Detroit Sports Commission. And without them, we wouldn't have been able to bring in many tournaments and dollars here to the Metro Detroit communities. And once again, if you're doing something at the local level and you want to bring in some national events or big events, contact the Sports Commission, because they might be able to help you defray some of those tournament costs that you're going to put on. So other than that, we do thank both those organizations.
Thank you, Stu. All right, so we're going to get into the big part of the summit this morning, and it's obviously COVID-19 implications. As we all know, working at in Parks and Recreation, we have been challenged last year and even into this year with COVID-19 and how it affects us and affects our programs. Starting off with state restrictions, we all know them. We probably, if you're like me, probably watched a lot of the press conferences to see what's changing on a daily basis. The big thing with the state restrictions that we can share is obviously making sure you're watching it, you're going to the website, michigan.gov/coronavirus. They update it on there every single day when they have a new change or executive order. But the big thing that we've noticed talking with ourselves and our communities is definitely talk with your local attorney and see how they take the changes. As you'll probably hear today, there's a lot of differences between communities and what communities are allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do based on what their attorneys are telling them. So big part on that. Also, USA Softball does have a return to the ballpark guidelines. Currently, it's more for championship level play, but they are working on it for a local league perspective. So that'll be available on USA on our website. So we can definitely update that when it gets to that point. But double check, and if you're gonna send us an email, we can always send it to you when it becomes live. So moving on, so at this point is when we'll throw it to our panelists and we'll start the discussion. The first one is going to be cost implications and budgets. So with COVID-19 and the need to potentially hire more staff, PPE, let's throw it to, we'll start off with Scott Mercer. Scott, do you want to share what you guys are doing in Troy in regards to this topic?
Sure, thanks, Chris. Couple things in regards to the budget. Actually, it was almost a wash for me last year. We did run one season instead of two, which obviously hurt us in the revenue aspect of things. But in terms of the budget for the one season we did run, we did cut out scorekeepers. Obviously, with youth out there and everything else, we felt the best idea to cut them out for the season. We did get some extra, obviously PPE, 5-gallon buckets for each team. Clipboards. Each team was required to bring their own PPE. Face masks, I did provide them for my umpires. So the budget ended up being okay for me last year, mainly because, unfortunately, I couldn't bring in the scorekeepers. So going this year, we're going to go with the same format. So my budget has not changed over the past 2 years, which is fortunate for us.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. Why don't we throw it over to Kirby and Sterling Heights? What's going on over there, Kirby?
Unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. It was unmuted a minute ago. This year is our first year running the softball or any youth sport in-house in a long time, as far as I know. So last year, we just kind of dictated what could be done to use our fields. And as some people may have heard, we were the extreme on cautious, PPE for everyone, up to the parents sitting in chairs by themselves. But budget-wise, that didn't affect us because we weren't putting it out there. We provided PPE for our field monitors, but they were already budgeted, and a few face masks didn't cost that much money. This year, we're assuming that it'll be pretty much the same, face masks for everyone, but we're going to ask the kids to provide those. Umpires, coaches, stuff like that will be, we will be requiring. Had a lot of parents ask what the restrictions will be, and we don't know. So we just say we're going to assume it's going to be the same, but to keep your eyes glued.
Okay, thank you. John, what's going on in Royal Oak?
Yeah, so kind of similar to what Troy, we only had one season that we ran rather than our two summer and fall seasons. So that kind of hurt our bottom line as far as numbers go. But what we did find out was kind of to segue into the next portion of the app. We were able to actually use the app to have teams submit their scores rather than have any sort of additional staff out there to track scores. But going forward, I think the city and I were going to maybe have more staff out there just so we can monitor the crowding between games, make sure everyone follows the protocols that are provided by the state and local health officials. So other than that, everything went as well as it could have gone and as it has in other previous seasons.
Thank you. Dan Sullivan, what's going on in Oxford in terms of any budget issues that you guys are going to be facing or dealing with?
We're fortunate enough not to have too much extra incurrence. We went with I had fewer teams, so I just went with a shorter season for my adults. I do have a supervisor out there, and the umpires just keep their own score. We do play mat ball, so it's a little easier for them to take a few more steps back and off to the side to be able to kind of create a little bit of distance. We just did things like take the bleachers away and sort of make the dugouts really restricted to just a couple of people, make the girls sit out in the back of them and only have a few people in there. But from a cost-effective standpoint, we already had staff that was on site till about 9 o'clock. So they'd come through the bathrooms once an hour and just kind of wash them down. And we also put up some signs just letting people know that, these bathrooms are only disinfected, half dozen times a day, come around every couple hours. But it says from a budget standpoint, we really didn't have much of an impact besides just not as many teams. But I shortened the season and did stuff like that. So we were able to walk away with it in pretty decent shape.
All right. Thank you. Last but not least, Troy and Sterling Heights. And Troy, you do more of the adult side of the programming. So have you guys seen anything different with the budget or cost implications that you'll have to be adding?
Cost-wise, no, we didn't change a whole lot. But we did add a second staff person out there. Normally, I just had one field coordinator for our 2 fields. I added a second one for that. On top of that, it didn't change our budget because we lost one of our leagues. We normally run a co-ed Friday. We didn't run that one, so I had some extra money there. But softballs, we end up using more softballs because we provided an additional new softball every game, and then tried to keep rotating softball. So we used 2 new softballs each game, and then we used some of the old ones and disinfected old ones and that kind of thing. So cost-wise, that it didn't really come out of my softball budget, but we did gate off all of the bleachers, and we did not use the dugouts as well. So we used snow fencing for that. So we had to purchase snow fencing and keep that up. And throughout the year, it's also a family park, so people would pull down the fencing, and it was a constant pulling up with that, and zip ties and stuff like that. So there was some minor additional costs with that kind of stuff, but overall, it wasn't a major impact on our budget. But those are little things that you wouldn't think of in a normal year that you'd have to do.
Perfect, thank you. And a great segue into the next topic that we'll be talking about is what changes will be needed. And Troy, you kind of alluded to a little bit on it with not having the dugouts being used and the bleachers being blocked off. Is there anything else you want to add into that piece of what needs to happen and what you've been doing?
Well, I know that every city and their attorneys interpret it differently and the how the orders come out. But Sterling Heights, I think, is on the stricter side. When it came through, we required masks on and off the field, regardless of whether or not they had, I won't say masks, a facial covering, regardless of whether they had a health implication or not. Obviously, you don't ask them if they have a health implication. The rule was just if you're on or off the field, you have a mask on, you remain 6 feet apart. We did not use dugouts to encourage 6 foot distancing. We sanitized fence lines, because people would always stand by the fence line, and that's how they gathered and chat and watch the game and all that. So we'd have sanitized fence lines. With the softballs, again, this is only for the adult side. Kirby can attest a little more to the youth side because he runs that. We used, again, the 2 new softballs, and then we sanitized softballs. We implemented rules where each team had their own softballs too. So not only is it 2 new softballs, it's 2 softballs for both sides. So you'd only, whatever team was in the field, they would get their own bag of softballs, and they were the only ones to touch that. I know it's going to an extreme measure, but we're trying to do anything and everything we can to keep people safe. Same thing with bats. Normally the umpires would go through and they would grab every bat, check every bat. Instead, we had them all lined up on the fence, and the umpires were to go and take a look, and make sure that they were all up to spec. But we didn't do quite, I don't want to say quite as thorough, but it wasn't quite as go over there and check them and touch every bat and make sure that they're all that. Obviously, they'd look for any illegal bats, anything like that. But we were trying to keep everything hands off. Same thing with umpires; they were required to wear masks on and off the field. And spectators were also required to wear them, regardless of whether if they were there just to see the park. We couldn't say, hey, you have to put a mask on. But if we knew they're spectating, as part of it, we required them to wear the mask. And then we added our second staff person so that we could, monitor the parking lot, for our normal, procedures, and then also the games, and then we could also monitor the field. So, we had 2 fields, so we had 2 monitors, so that helped out a ton. And people were compliant for the most part. I would say around July we added in. We started off with just masks off the field, and they were allowed to. Then some more extreme orders came through, and so we upped up our game and said they had to have it on the field. When that happened, a lot of my teams said, we weren't, this wasn't part of the initial thing, the initial rules that you inputted. And I said, we're in a pandemic. We have to adjust as it goes, and this is our rule. I did allow some teams to bow out if they wanted with a credit on their account to do so. So some teams did have some major backlash. Everybody has different thoughts and ideas about what masks mean and whether or not you should. And we as a city just implement a rule, and they have to follow it. So it's part of it, and in the middle of the pandemic and all that. So those are the majority of the different rules and stuff we implemented, and we were very strict on those. I had to eject multiple players for not wanting to have it or getting too worked up about asking them to put a mask on or whatnot. And then then the language comes out, and then they get abusive in how they speak, and and then we have to remove them from the field. It did happen a couple times. It wasn't excessive, but after a few weeks, once we started back up after the masks rule went in place, everything was pretty good. Everybody knew and understood it. And then in the same sense, we were very strict. But after somebody runs a sprint, I wasn't like, hey, put your mask on. Go off to the side. You're 6 feet away from everybody. Pull your mask down for a few seconds, catch your breath, and then get back in there. If they're out in the field and they pull it down for a second, I just said, umpire, please just tell them, hey, put your mask back up. It happens a couple times. Let's make sure you're 6 feet away from everybody on the field for the most part, so it's not too big of an issue. We want to make sure that you keep that order. Otherwise, everyone's going to not follow it. So those are the things that we did on the adult side.
Troy, if I can jump in here too, and this is for other panelists also. Some of the implications that people put in place last year, are you looking for any other changes, either adds or deletes, for the current year?
I think because we were on the stricter side, we are not going to be adding anything. I don't foresee anything that we need to up our game on. We just need to keep following through with those procedures we added. And I've already had a couple teams, say, we're not sure if we're coming back or whatnot. So I'm still waiting to see how impactful that has on registration. But I've had a number of my teams, that played, say, it wasn't too bad. And one thing to note too, everyone knows it. In the hotter months, it is harder to wear that mask than it is. But when it gets in the colder months, everyone was, because we had one long season. I actually started my season in June, and we normally have a 14-week season with a single admission tournament, and then we go into our fall season on Labor Day. Because we started later, I just did one long season from the start of, I believe it was June through October.
Okay, perfect. Kirby, do you have anything to add from the youth side of things from Sterling Heights that Troy didn't cover?
A lot of our stuff was the same across the board as far as the ballparks. I did add staffing to some of the smaller fields that the younger groups use that we normally wouldn't have put a staff person at. We did that. And basically the staff person just walked around saying mask a lot, just to remind people. With youths, you have the parents who are generally the bigger issue than the kids. So getting parents to space out, keep their mask on. You know, obviously the rules said that while you were eating or drinking, you could have your mask down. So the number of parents that would sit with a cup to their mouth for an hour just so that they didn't have to wear a mask was amusing. But as long as they were distanced, we didn't really hound them too bad. But as we all know, a lot of parents come to watch youth sports to socialize with other parents, not so much to watch the youth sports. So that was something we had to work with. And like Troy said, we started our leagues when the state mandate said no masks were needed outside. And then it was mask outside if you can't distance. And then it was masks no matter what. So that was a battle. But we're planning to start off this summer masks for everyone at all times. And then hopefully it'll lighten up as the summer goes on and numbers drop. But pretty much everything Troy said, we were on the youth side.
Yeah, and like one other thing we did too, we noticed that there's always a spot where people come off the field, and that's where they want to gather, talk, and everything. Usually it's the dugout. We removed the dugout. Then we had picnic tables. We had one of the four-seater picnic tables, 4-bench picnic tables, and they would always come off the field, and then next thing you know, there's 12 guys sitting at that picnic table, sitting on it, around it, and all that. So we actually had to remove all of our picnic tables as well. So there was basically no seating area, and we told them if you wanted to sit somewhere, to bring your own chair. So that was another minor issue.
Perfect, thank you. Moving on to Scott and Troy, did you anything that's this?
Yeah, we made a few major changes, and I'm a softball purist, so some of them were a struggle for me. But talking to Dan up in Oxford, we actually went with a strike mat as opposed to the umpire calling it, so the umpire could stand 6 feet to the side, and it worked great. The other one we did, which could affect your budget if you're getting the demand for teams, we went to 3 games a night as opposed to 4. Normally we'd start at 6:20, run 4 games a night, end about 11, 11:10. We went to a 3-night format starting at 6:30, 8, and 9:30. The umpires actually at the end of the day loved it because there wasn't that pressure of teams standing there trying to get the game in, last inning. And obviously they lost a 1 game pay per night, but I think in the long run they actually enjoyed that format. So that is one thing we did change. We had signage everywhere in our park. On the dugouts, it was 4 people per dugout. Every picnic table had a sign on it, the sign when you walked in, signs in the bathrooms. We had signage everywhere. We did not require them to wear masks throughout the game. We said they had to have one with them in case of emergency, and they had to social distance. The umpire was required to have a mask around their neck that they could easily pull up in case of an injury, case of emergency, case of an argument, they could pull it up. But they were not required to wear it throughout the game, but they were required to have it around their neck. And then the other thing we did was we went electronic with everything, from our registration fees for the teams to the actual player waivers, and everything was all electronic, which was a huge change for us. So we did that. We have no score sheets, no rosters. Everything was electronic last year. And those are some big changes that we're going to keep going this year and then beyond this year as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Scott. John, Royal Oak, any changes that will be needed or that you guys have implemented?
Yes. So, I mean, some of the changes that we implemented, obviously we didn't force the players to wear masks while they're on the field, but once they were off the field, getting ready to bat, they had to wear the mask prior to stepping onto the field. We had staff member out there that was constantly reminding everyone to not congregate, which a lot of the players didn't really like the constant reminder, but it was important to kind of help everyone keep their social distance. And the umpires were 6 feet away from the batter or any sort of field of play, and were required to wear masks. The changes will move forward is obviously we'll be adding more additional staff to the fields to help out with the congregating and any other questions that the players may have. The other thing is we required the teams to wipe down the benches and so forth after each game. We actually just bought some electrostatic sprayers that our staff will be required to use. So after each game, they will go through and disinfect any touch points, bleachers, benches, fences, that sort of stuff. And we did allow, each team was only able to use their ball. So almost like football, where as soon as you change sides, the ball changes as well. So those are kind of the changes that we had implemented, and then changes going forward into this next season.
Perfect. Thanks, John. Sully, Dan, anything from Oxford that you guys are doing differently?
No, we're just gonna, I mean, again, just my only answer to people is we'll follow whatever rules are in place. So I'm hesitant to give out a specific answer. I mean, obviously, no, we're gonna have masks. We're gonna do social distancing as much as humanly possible. Last year, I didn't even run a youth rec league. When all this was going down, we wound up canceling everything in the spring. So it'll be new for the girls softball players. I did run my travel league last year, but did not require them to wear masks on the field. That obviously is probably going to be different this year. So those are the only things I'm waiting on, is just to see what exactly, hopefully, you know, things don't start for another month or two, that some changes might come along to help with that. But we're just planning on following whatever's on board with the local health department and what we're so I'm still kind of playing a wait and see, but I'm letting people know that it's going to be masked, it's going to be social distancing. I know it's kind of off sport, but for soccer, like what we did was just schedule less games, more weeknight games, painted less fields with more space in between them. So that's kind of what I'm going to do for softball too, is just kind of try to spread it out a little bit more, so that we have that congregating issue is not as much of a problem. And then we probably won't host any tournaments again this year, just for the larger gatherings. So those are the things that we're probably going to look forward to doing. Not look forward to doing, but going to have to do, to just follow some of the basic tenets of what's going to go on and what all the mandates are going to be.
Chris, just a quick question for some of the panelists here too. Did any of you have to shut down league play to a COVID outbreak this past year?
We did in Sterling Heights. Actually, the week before the season started, we gave the kids like a week of practice, and that week we had 2 teams that I guess caught COVID on a couple kids, and we found out a week into play, and just did a hard stop for 3 or 4 days to sort out who came in contact with who, and make sure that we didn't cause a quick spread like we were afraid was going to happen. And then from there on, we just shut down divisions. But that first time, it was a hard stop on the league after 1 week.
Anybody else have to deal with that this season, or even in the audience?
We had a couple cases in Troy, unfortunately, and they happened on the same night. On our Monday night leagues, we treated them just like a rainout. So one instance, I got the call the next day, so obviously we knew the person was contagious that night. So we canceled all games for that next Monday and basically treated it like a rainout. We didn't want to take the chance, so we just basically gave them 2 weeks off. The umpire for that game was notified, so they weren't umpiring a different night that week. In the other case, we did get notification later in the week. It was like on Thursday, we were notified about a Monday situation. We did the same thing. We canceled all games for that next Monday. The managers were great about it, and they understood. So we just treated it like a rainout and made up the games later in the season.
Thanks, Scott. Anyone else?
A little bit different. Sorry to interrupt. We sort of did what Scott did in Troy, but when I had it reported, what we did is we quarantined both the teams that played in that game for that night for the 2 weeks in the umpire. So I had it happen on several occasions. The only bad downside of doing it that way, well, obviously the benefit is you can keep your leagues going. The downside of doing that, I noticed, is as the leagues kept going on, there was less and less reports. So early in the season, people would seem to report it, and we had to do it, and we quarantined teams. But I think, personally, I think the manager would told people, hey, if you're sick, just don't tell anything. We won't tell anybody. And then, you just don't play. So I think that's what was happening. I don't know for sure or for a fact, but the fact that early on we had several cases and it kind of had that, and I had to tell people, and then later on there was nothing, crickets, and really as the season went on there was nothing. So I don't know that we're going to adjust that policy or not. We may go to something like Scott does in Troy, where we just give them a chance. But I did give them a chance to make up those games. I told them if anything possible, we would get them their guaranteed minimum games in still. But obviously, people would rather play in the summertime when it's warm than in the wintertime when it's cold at the end of the season. So I think that that's kind of what happened.
Awesome, thank you. Anyone else on that topic? Okay. We did have one question that came in regarding face shields. Anybody on the panel that allowed the face shield instead of the mask? Okay, seeing none. Anybody that's
yeah.
Go ahead, Kirby, sorry.
I did, just from a coaching standpoint, and again, I'm going to reference soccer. I didn't run softball. My coaches are on the fields officiating the youth games, and we were okay with the shield. But obviously, that was 7-8 months ago when the shield was still considered a viable option, where I don't believe it is anymore. So we did, but we'll probably be adjusting that for the spring.
Okay. Kirby, you had something?
We did just for ADA standards, when people say that they can't handle a face mask because it's hard for them to breathe, their claustrophobia, or what their reasoning is. Face shield was the next viable option, so that's why we allowed it. And then it also gave us a little more ground to stand on to say, hey, you have to at least have something in front of your face or you can't come in.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Moving on, now the next one is very across the board, and we've probably already covered it in some senses, but anybody on, and I'll just throw this out to the panelists right now rather than going to you individually. Is there anything else you guys are doing to keep people safe while they're attending games or programs within your community that hasn't already been talked about?
Chris, in Troy, we provided a 5-gallon bucket at each dugout that had hand sanitizer and disinfectant spray. It was up to the teams to spray the dugouts in between if they wanted to. We gave each team a 5-gallon bucket. I went to our local hardware store, and I think I bought 50 5-gallon buckets to start the season. Each team got a 5-gallon bucket. We kind of did what the other communities are doing. We gave them a Sharpie in their bucket, said write your name on the softball, and they only used their team softballs while they were in the field. The umpires were instructed never to touch the softballs or the bats. And then we didn't pass back a scorebook or score sheet. We communicated at the end of each half inning with the score, and then the umpire would electronically submit the score at the end of the game, or my supervisor would, and it would go into my email for the next morning. So when I came in, I had all the scores sitting in my inbox to update the standings. And obviously in the restrooms, you had to wear a mask. And then, like I said, we just communicated well with the managers and the coaches, and just asked them, please, if somebody's not feeling well, let us know so we can communicate with the teams.
Perfect. Anyone else want to share anything that they've done that we haven't already covered? All right, seeing none, and again, remember, anybody that's attending can just in listen mode, feel free to throw it in the chat if there's anything you're doing that you think is different or can help everybody that's on the call. Feel free just to throw it in the chat. Moving on, local limitations and restrictions. Now, this is probably a broad topic as well. One of our board members from Redford Township haven't been able to do softball at all because their local community has not given them the green light to do it. So this is another one. We'll all throw it out to just our panel in general to see if there's any local limitations or restrictions that your communities have put on you guys in terms of not providing any programs or leagues, tournaments. Anybody want to jump in on that one?
Chris,
in Troy, we restricted any type of special events or gatherings. So the only thing we really ran last year was the adult leagues. And that was the limitations coming from the department head. We didn't run the youth. We're going to run the youth this year in conjunction with Clausen. We ran our 50 and over softball program, which I normally run with Farmington Hills, Royal Oak, and Birmingham. I just communicated with the cities and said, hey, we can't control it well enough going into different cities. So I ran that league only in Troy. And we're not sure what we're going to do with that one. But that's like limitations as to what we can control and our department regulations.
Thanks, Scott. Stu?
And I think what you mentioned before about each agency either has an attorney working for that city or they have to contract them out. And that was part of the issues that we've heard from some of the cities, that they don't have an actual attorney there, so they have to contract it out. By the time they got that information back, you know, restrictions could have been changed through either the state or the CDC. One thing that you can always do is, if you need some other guidance, utilize your colleagues that are in the field through either MParks or through us, or go to the return to the ballpark guidelines. And if they need some guidelines to look at to say, hey, what are people doing? You can always show them that. And I think some good examples that were put out there is, look how strict Sterling Heights is to Redford Township, that they would not let them play, to what some of the other cities are doing so that they can play. So there's a lot of things to look at there, but the biggest problem is that there's always gray areas from what the governor says, from what the CDC says, to what return to the ballpark guidelines are.
Absolutely. Anyone else on the panel have any insight on this topic? Right, seeing none, we'll move on to vaccines. This one is probably going to be a hot button item moving forward for a lot of communities. We've already kind of experienced it here in Grosse Pointe Farms, hearing that people have gotten, I've gotten the vaccine. I've actually gotten both vaccines now. I've gotten both my doses. Here's my card. I'm not wearing a mask. So I'm curious to throw it out to the panel. Have you guys, or even anybody that's in the audience, have experienced that yet? And if so, have you guys put anything in place how that's going to be handled at a local level or at your parks in regards to vaccine? So I have the vaccine. Here's my card. I've gotten the Pfizer vaccine twice. I don't need to wear a mask, or I don't want to wear a mask. Any insight, or anybody want to discuss how that might affect their communities, or is it just gonna not going to be an option, that you're going to have to wear a mask even if you got the vaccine? So throw it out there for discussion to anybody. Scott, do you have any input on that or thoughts on how that's going to affect things in Troy?
Well, obviously, at our indoor facilities, that's going to be an issue pretty quick. I'm already hearing from our customers that they've gotten the second vaccine. They're excited about it, which is great. But obviously, right now, we're holding steady with the state guidelines and what the CDC is saying, that even if you get both vaccines, you have to wear a mask to prevent the spread, because they don't know for sure if you can spread it, even if you've had both vaccines. The outdoor program for softball, it's an easy one for me, because, you know, the only time we require them to wear a mask is if they can't social distance and if they're going to the restroom. So playing softball, it's not going to be an issue. Where, you know, in Sterling Heights, that's going to be a battle for them at times, I would guess. But in Troy, outdoor stuff, we're okay. But inside our community center here, I can imagine it's going to happen pretty quick.
Sure. So throwing it over to Sterling Heights, since Scott mentioned you guys, and obviously you guys are the stricter of probably the communities that are on the panel. Has that come up in discussions with administration or anything yet on your guys' side of things?
Well, it has in a way, because I mean we are and have always just followed the health restriction guidelines and everything like that. Like Scott said, no one knows if you can still spread it regardless if you got the vaccine. Our rules are going to be put in place, and they're going to be set in stone. You wear a mask until those restrictions are lifted. If someone argues it, we always have a managers meeting, with both the youth and adult before the season starts. we always go over those, and if they can't follow it, they're, we're going to tell them, we're sorry, we're going to have to ask you to step off the field then if you can't follow that. And I've been upfront with my adult teams. Every adult team that's registered at this point, I've told them we will be following it. There will be masks on and off the field, just like there was at the end of the season last year. And I tell them as well, as soon as we believe in the health restrictions do relax, then we will as well. No one wants to wear a mask. We don't want to wear a mask. I've gotten, personally, I've gotten my first dose. I will have my second dose by the time the season starts. I will be wearing a mask. So that's kind of the way we're going to follow this.
Thanks, Troy.
Yeah,
any other insight, Kirby?
I was gonna say on the youth side, for me, youth can't get the vaccine right now, so you're in a mask. I don't care. And like Troy said, we're going to be strict. Parents are going to be in a mask too. I don't know how you can differentiate and avoid confrontation of knowing someone has the vaccine or not. Like, we're not going to put out a sticker, I've been vaccinated. It's just easier to say everyone wears a mask.
Yeah, agree. John and Royal Oak, any thoughts on it?
Yeah, so we've opened up our indoor facilities on a limited basis, and we're kind of starting to hear those complaints. But piggyback on what everyone else is saying, we're all going to be requiring masks if you can't, especially for indoors. Outdoor softball, obviously we're going to keep the same rules that we had this previous season. You don't have to wear a mask on the field, but if you cannot maintain 6 feet social distancing and you're off the field, regardless if you're vaccinated or not, you will have to wear a mask. And I think that's going to continue until more guidelines loosen up through the local health and state officials, and more information comes out about these vaccines.
Perfect, thank you. Dan, any other input on that part from Oxford? No? Okay.
Sorry.
Did you have anything, Dan? Sorry, I can't see you on my screen, so. Are you good? Okay. The other part with the vaccines, and obviously everybody's going with the mask use. Question for the panel. When it comes to your umpires, are you requiring umpires to wear the mask when they're behind the plate, or even if they're officiating the game from the pitcher's mound? Scott, are you requiring umpires to wear masks? I think you've said no already, but are you requiring them?
Right now for the adult program, no, because we implemented the strike mat. It was tough because umpires are stubborn and they're trained a certain way. So even with the strike mat I put out there, the rubber mat, the first couple of weeks I'd walk over and see the umpire standing, what they would call in the slot, for behind the catcher, and I have to go, kind of move out of there. You're not supposed to be there. That's the reason for the rubber mat. And so for the adults, they got used to it, which was great. So I didn't require them to wear the mask unless they couldn't social distance. And like I said, it was around their neck in case of emergency. In case there was an injury, they had to run somewhere, they could quickly pull it up. But obviously, with the youth program this year, that's a different animal we have to deal with the umpires, because you can't use a strike mat. So the umpires will have to wear a mask for the youth program if they're going to be anywhere within 6 feet of either the pitcher or the catcher and the batter. So for the youth, yes, the umpire will have to wear it if they're standing behind the plate.
Perfect, thank you. Kirby, Troy, do one of you want to, I'm assuming people are wearing masks or umpires are wearing masks in your guys' programs? Safe to say?
All masks, all the time. That's
all masks.
Yeah. Yeah. We told umpires while they're running, they can pull it down. That was the extent.
Okay.
But to pull off the face mask and pull down your mask was impossible. So.
Got it. John, Royal Oak, umpires wearing masks?
Yep, our umpires are wearing masks, even though they're 6 feet, behind the plate. They are wearing masks. So that's what we got.
Perfect. Dan?
Last year I didn't have the youth, but this year, again, I'm probably going to ask them to wear masks, even though they are backed up off the plate. And then the youth one for rec will probably make them wear a mask too, but I do allow them to officiate from behind the mound if they would like, if they feel more comfortable. But our travel will have to wear them as well, as those guys are right behind the plate and on top of the action. So we are going to require them.
Perfect, thank you. And John, as the umpire in chief for USA Softball and Metro Detroit, do you have anything that you can add that can potentially help the attendees when it comes to the umpires, that especially when being certified by USA Softball, when it comes to the mask wearing that your umpires are doing or not doing right now?
Well, if it's a requirement to wear a mask because you can't social distance, you're going to have to do that. Now, you can experiment. You know, there are masks that are extremely restrictive. There are masks that aren't as restrictive. Actually, we started to do a little study. I did unofficially, looking for either neck gathers or masks that would be not as restrictive to umpires, and then still get the job done as far as keeping the COVID-19 from spreading. So, but if it's a requirement, you're going to have to do it. Now, saying that, outside of Michigan, I've done some extensive travel with fast pitch softball around the country this last summer, and for the most part, except for Michigan, nobody wears a mask. So Michigan is forcing, or not forcing, but trying to be a little more ahead of the game, so to speak, with requiring masks and so on. So
perfect, thank you.
Chris, one thing to add here, which some other people had said earlier, one way that can help the umpire would be is if you did go to a mat, the umpire can stand approximately 6 to 10 feet to the side of it, and then they can see if the ball does hit the mat or not. They would just have to tell if the ball is too high or not enough arc on the ball. The other thing is that we posed this question to USA Softball Director of Umpires, and then they looked into it with Major League Baseball. And Major League Baseball was leaving it up to the umpires for them to decide what they feel mask would be best. The one that they found that worked the best was the Under Armour mask. So that was something that came down from them. They're still analyzing it right now. So one thing to be on the lookout, see what Major League Baseball comes up with for this year, because it has not officially been announced yet.
Okay, perfect.
Crystal, one thing about masks too is if you're hosting events where you're bringing in teams from other communities or out of state, they need to be aware of what your rule is regarding masks. Like John said, if you went down to Ohio, you very seldom saw anybody wearing a mask down there. But if they're going to come up here and play in an event in your community, they need to be notified well in advance of these are the rules, and if you don't follow the rules, you know, these are going to be the consequences. So if you're going to hold some type of event where teams are coming from not only your community, but even outside your community in the state of Michigan or out of state, they need to be aware of what you're going to enforce and how you're going to enforce it.
Yeah, 100%. I was just going to say that, Denny, because I know going down to Ohio with my daughter's softball team, it was a free-for-all. There was no mask wearing or anything like that. So, and not even if you guys are not you might not be hosting it, but you're renting your fields to an outside organization that might be hosting tournaments at your facility. You want to make sure you relay that message to them before they show up, and none of the teams have masks or anything like that if they're coming from another state. So great points on that one. Anything else that you guys have in terms of umpires and mask wearing that we want to cover? Okay. And again, in attendees, if you have any questions or anything, or any best practices that you're doing, you know, please throw it in the chat function so we can see it and make sure everybody gets it. Moving on, waivers. Waivers are obviously a big thing in our profession, that they sign it every time they sign up for a program. With COVID-19, I guess the question out there that we'll pose to the panelists is, have you added anything to your waivers in regards to COVID-19? And then a second question on it is, have you changed the way that you're accepting waivers from your team or participants? So for this one, why don't we start with John in Royal Oak? John, do you want to touch base what you guys are doing in Royal Oak in terms of waivers?
Yeah, so our waivers, we included a COVID protocol or a COVID clause last season that we'll probably implement this season as well. And it pretty much just stated, we're in a pandemic at this time. You understand that playing during this time of pandemic, you're playing at your own risk. The city and the staff will do everything that we can to keep everyone safe, but just understand that you are accepting these protocols that we have set forth in our league and the risks that you are willing to take to play. And everyone was pretty receptive to that waiver. I think everyone understood it. And if there was any sort of, complaints about any sort of rule changes that we had throughout the season, as this is an ever evolving situation going on, something that we could point to and say, well, you signed the waiver and it, you understand the conditions that you're playing on. As far as the waivers go, we did everything pretty much electronically. So they submitted all their waivers to our emails, and that's how we did it this year. And we're probably going to do that going forward, even post-COVID.
Perfect, thank you. Dan, are you guys doing anything different with waivers, or did you add in the COVID-19?
I just added a separate waiver for my travel league, and I'll probably throw one in for my adult league either. I really wanted to try to make it part of the waiver we already have by adding a couple sentences, and I found out that didn't necessarily equate to being as easy as I was hoping it would. So I wound up just going with sort of a separate waiver all together for my travel, for my youth stuff. But for my adults, I try to incorporate it in the one that we already have by just adding a couple lines. And that seemed to be okay. It's part of our roster. Like the first chunk of our roster is our waiver, and then everybody signs, prints, and gives me all the information on it. So that's what we wound up doing, and we'll probably do it again that way.
Perfect. Thank you. Troy, Kirby, the tag team, do you guys want to touch on the waiver portion?
We updated our waiver in language to say, like the risk of injury and illness type stuff, but specifically said, for example, communicable diseases, so that going forward, whatever the next pandemic that we find ourselves in, we're already set up for.
Perfect, thank you. Scott and Troy?
We actually changed our entire format last year, which is beyond this year. We're going to keep going with it because it actually turned out to be a benefit to our program. We used to use the legal size paper. They'd fill out the front, and then the back they would print, sign, and date, and then turn that back in, and then you'd get the add-ons and everything else from the manager. What we did last year is through our RecTrack system is the team registration for payment was all done through RecTrack. I sent a form to the managers. They had to give me the list of names of the players on their roster, just the names. And then I sent out a link to the managers to send to their players. Each player had to go into our RecTrack system and actually register for the league. So there was no fee attached to it. They went in, they clicked on a couple of waivers, they typed in their team name, they hit process, it was done. The benefit to that is I can guarantee you that about 25% of the signatures on my rosters over the past 10 years are probably forged by the managers. So it does clean that part up a little bit. So in terms of this, every player had to go in and do it. There were a few hiccups. We had some extra blank waivers at the fields to get players started at the beginning of the season. I gave an extra week to get in the system and register. There's always a few that complain that the system's horrible, they can't do it. And I tried to explain that 450 other people have been able to do it. So, we can get this done, let's work together. But beyond a few hiccups, it was nice because then the manager would just email me and let me know if there's a player addition to their team. And then have it do it by, the day before or noon that day of the game. And as long as they registered, they were good to go. I printed out a roster for my staff to have at the fields. of all the players that were registered. It was alphabetical order. So if a coach wanted to check something, we had it right there. We didn't handle protests at the field, but if they wanted to check to see if their own players were on there, we could let them know. So beyond this year, we're going to continue for this year. We did add a COVID line onto the waiver. Like I said, they clicked twice for waivers, and then they were done, so the COVID was included. But it was all electronic, so storage purposes, it's great for me because I'm no longer keeping 40 to 60 paper rosters from every season.
Perfect, thank you. And everybody should, I believe, see in the chat what the city of Novi added to their waiver in regards to COVID, but it looks like it's also for any other potential disease transmission. So thank you to Kristen for putting that in there. Last but not least,
one other thing, Chris, one other thing on waivers. Once again, if you go to the return to the ballpark, there is a sample waiver that's in there. Does not mean you have to use it, but you might want to take some of the verbiage that's in there, a sentence or two, or use the whole thing. I think it's pretty lengthy what's in there, but there is a sample that's out there if you'd like to see that.
Perfect, thanks, Stu. Last but not least is marketing. So I'm sure some communities that either did not have softball leagues last year or had people that did not participate because of COVID and the worries associated with it are going to be trying to get those players back to their communities. And if you didn't hold the league and lost some of those players to surrounding areas that may have had a league, is there any creative marketing that you are doing this coming season to get people back into your league and playing in your community? So again, I'll throw it out to the panelists, but attendees, I know seeing the names that have attended, all of you are doing things. So if you're doing anything that's different or creative, please throw it in the chat function so we can see that as well. So starting off with the marketing piece of it, John, do you have anything that you are doing differently this year to attract teams back to your leagues?
Yeah, I think we're gonna not being a problem. I think everyone's gonna be wanting to jump on getting outside and playing. But we actually just got a Facebook page, surprisingly, a couple of months ago. So we'll be doing some heavy marketing using our social media platforms. I'll kind of touch a little bit more on this in the next slide, but we've had the app for about 2 years now. So anyone who has it can receive push notifications. So that's a good way for us to kind of reach out to those teams who may have sat out our season last year. They know when our registration opens and stuff like that. So that's kind of how we're approaching our marketing. And I think so far we'll see how it goes.
Perfect. Going through here. Troy or Kirby, are you guys doing anything in Sterling Heights differently to market to the teams coming back?
On my end, with the youth being that we took over a now closed up association, we have the fun task of reaching all of those people that played with them last year. And even though we have a good relationship with them, they close their books and can't pull up rosters to help us send out to old people. So we're going to be doing a lot of paid Facebook ads.
Perfect, thank you. Scott, anything in Troy differently in terms of marketing to your teams?
The only thing I really changed was, allowed teams from 2019 to come back as a returning team this year. Normally it's just, the season before for early registration. So I already got a couple of teams that didn't play last year but are coming back this year, which is kind of cool. Obviously, I'm sending my stuff to Dan Sullivan so he can push it out on the USA Detroit website, which is available to anybody within our program. And I'm just trying to figure a way now with if I purchase 50 more buckets to put stickers on them somehow to advertise our leagues going forward. So
perfect. Last but not least, Dan, anything differently in Oxford?
Nothing differently, just trying to do a little bit more electronic than we've done in the past. Unfortunately, we don't have a very our, our staff isn't the most tech savvy in the world, so just getting stuff out on Twitter and Facebook. Trying to do a little bit more electronic, trying to do a little bit more, even the registration, and trying to really push our online registration aspect this year.
Perfect. We did have a few of our other board members who weren't able to be part of the panel today share some of the stuff they're doing. West Bloomfield is going to be allowing teams who participated in 2019 but not 2020 to return as returning teams. So I'm going to guess that's possibly a discounted rate for those teams. And then Redford Township, obviously we alluded to them not being able to have any programs or leagues going on last year. They're going to try and implement some home run derbies and pop-up tournaments. And if gatherings are allowed, they're going to try and get some food truck to be out at their facilities to entice more people to be out there. And obviously continuing to sanitize equipment as much as possible to keep keep everybody safe between games. So obviously that was a lot in terms of COVID, and a lot of us are tired of COVID, but hopefully that was some good input. There was more comments that were in the chat feature regarding CDC requirements. So thank you to Sunshine for putting that in there, that masks, and even if you have just 2 doses, are still required because they can still spread and everything like that. So there is a link there to CDC if you have any people in your community who are saying that they don't have to wear the masks. So we do have a bunch of questions that have come in, so I'm just going to leave those till the very end. So anybody who has put questions into the chat, we've got them, so we will touch base on those at the very end with our panel. At this time, we're going to move over to John from the City of Royal Oak, who's going to introduce and talk about the app that he's mentioned a few times during the presentation. So Hillary or Tina, I don't know if I need to do anything to change who's presenting. So give us one moment.
Got it, Chris, just one second.
Okay, so I'm just gonna leave this up here real quick for everyone to see, if everyone can see it. Maybe if the panelists can just let me know. I can't see anyone while this is up, but if you can just kind of verbally say you can see it, that'd be great.
It's there.
Got it.
Okay.
Got it.
So, like I've mentioned before, about 2 years ago, we kind of instituted an app. It's called RO Sports. And previously, before this app, you know, teams would have to come into our office, submit scores. You know, we would always be constantly sending out schedules because they lost schedules. We had a phone line for weather updates. It just really wasn't very convenient for anyone. The communication was always lacking, in my point of view. So I had an app in one of our other leagues in Florida where I came from, so I pretty much transitioned it to the leagues that we have here up in Royal Oak. And this app can be obviously designed and used for each other entities, tournaments, leagues, etc. We use it for our leagues. I know a lot of people have tournaments that go on, so I'll kind of go over all the features of what can or cannot be done. But real quick, you know, one of the benefits is obviously everyone has a smartphone, whether it be Android or Apple. So everyone will have access to this app. You as a organizer can receive scores instantly. So you can go, managers can go through the Score app, submit their scores, and you receive them pretty much within 2 minutes of submission. Obviously, one of the other benefits is the increased communication between staff and teams. And I'll kind of go over that as we further get into the app. You can have some push notifications go through the app. Also, there's a chat feature as well. And then, like I said, there's multiple setups to match organization needs. So if you're running tournaments, this is a great platform. If you're running leagues, this is also a great platform. It doesn't necessarily have to pertain to adult softball or anyone. You can kind of streamline it to whatever your needs are. The platform that we use, it's called App Yourself. And if you guys have a copy of the PowerPoint presentation, there's a link to it. What's great about this platform is you don't necessarily have to be as technological savvy in creating an app as far as coding goes. They have a lot of good, what I call templates that you can kind of just use and plug in the information that you want those to receive. Or if you want to get crazy, you can also do some coding yourself. The pricing for this is there's a business plan, which I recommend. It allows you to reach all platforms. It's $858 a year. So as you can see right here, there's a couple options that I have. We have a submit scores, schedules, standings, weather updates, and map. So after a game, we can go to submit scores here. And there's a little bit of a lag between my phone and the screen, so just bear with me here. I don't know what's going on with that. I guess I'll do it this way. All right, so everyone can see here. All right, so this is kind of just the platform. I was showing it on my phone, but for some odd reason it wasn't going through. So you can go to submit scores here, and teams can select their dates. So usually I'll update the day you're on, which is convenient for teams. They can click on their game time. They can click on their night and league. And then they can submit, you know, their information. I'll just go through this real quick. Submit their scores. And then submit them. And then you can have this set up where it goes to your desired email. We have a softball score email that it will be administered to. And then teams will know that the score is submitted after the seeing that thank you screen. The other cool feature about this is schedules. Like I mentioned, a lot of teams always are emailing us. They lost their schedule, or they're at the field and they can't remember what field they were on. So they can use the app, and then they can view their schedule. I'm not going to go through all of them, but they can see their standings. Another cool feature about this, and like I touched on it a little bit earlier, is we can send out push notifications. And essentially what a push notification is, it's anytime, you know, you essentially receive a text message and it pops up on your screen. It's similar to that. So what's great about these push notifications is in real time, we can send teams updates. So if we have a game going on at 6:10, their game is playing, all of a sudden it rains, it lightnings, the field are unplayable. Now we have to pretty much cancel the entire night. We can go here, I can submit a little push notification and teams get it instantly. And you can create your own message, rain out, City of Royal Oak, all games are canceled. due to the weather. And what's great about this is you don't have to worry about teams showing up that have a later time frame and nobody there, and then you get a bunch of complaints the next day saying, well, how come I never received any notification? This is real time. They get it. What's also great about this too is, like I said, we've been having this for 2 years now. So for registration, if you guys are doing any sort of pop-up tournaments, you can just create a quick chat, pops up on these people's phone screens, and they can see, oh, registration's open now, or oh, you know, the city of Troy is doing a pop-up home run derby. So it's a great communication tool that organizations can use. Another cool feature, especially for those who use tournaments, is the map feature. If you have different locations that you guys are utilizing for your tournaments, you can put those locations on this app. So you can let your teams come from out of state, hey, download, you know, the Royal Oak Sports app, and then you can look at all the locations. That way, you know, if they lose the address or they can't find the email to all the locations, they can come here, they can click on the location of the park, and then they can get turn-by-turn directions associated with whatever Google Maps they use, or even the Apple apps. So that's also a really cool feature. A lot of people I know run tournaments. This feature is actually disabled for my organization just because we don't run as many tournaments. But there is a feature to essentially have members log in or even host a chat. And what's great about this is, you know, whoever has this app can essentially talk to a representative of yours and have a little text message conversation. Hey, where is field 5? I can't find it. Or, you know, our game's still on. I just saw that there was a postponement. What is the new updated times for tournaments? And the only kind of downside to this is you would almost have to have a staff member sitting on the app or at the computer, you know, looking for the chats to come through, as this chat is not necessarily pinned on your phone or your device. To counteract that, though, you can have pre-made messages appear. So if they were to write, where is field 5? You can kind of see my previous test message. It shows up, welcome to our app. We usually reply within 1 working day. So you can alter that message to say, thank you for your message. We'll get back to you at our earliest convenience. Or thank you for your message. We've forwarded this to the appropriate personnel. So kind of a cool feature to use. Like I said, this feature can be disabled. It's disabled for us. That way, you know, people are just not constantly talking to us throughout the day. But if you guys run a lot of tournaments or whatnot, it's a cool feature to look into. But other than that, it's a pretty simple app. I mean, there's nothing crazy to it. Like I said, this app yourself platform, they have a lot of already made templates. You can just go in and create your own formats. You can open the chat up. You can have push notifications. So there's a lot of cool things you can do when you're running your tournaments or leagues. I've had a lot of positive feedback from our managers saying, hey, I didn't know what field I was on, but I was able just to look on the schedule and see that. Or, hey, thanks, I was on my way to the field and I just got a push notification that the games were canceled. So a lot of positive feedback. I'm gonna see if I can probably try to stop my screen.
Awesome, John. Thanks for sharing that. Quick question: people on your leagues, is that QR code what they need to utilize to download it or get attached to the app?
So that QR code is actually kind of the way you can view it online. That's I was trying to get it to show up on my phone, but it's just like downloading any app. So you would go to the App Store, search RO Sports, and then download the app, and it functions just like any other app. Go to the Google Play Store and do like that. That version is a web version, so that's kind of, if people don't have or they don't want to download the app, I guess they can access through the web version. But most of my people download it through their app store.
Okay, perfect. Do any of the panelists have any questions for John in regards to the app? And again, if any of the attendees do, feel free to throw it into the chat and we'll get those answered at the end.
Hey John, how simple is it for on our side to input a league or a schedule? Is it all just you put it on your computer and then it kind of downloads to the app, and then you're just basically pulling up what you created on whatever format you use? How does that work?
Yeah, so there's two ways. So I have, you can set up as a PDF, and by setting it up as a PDF, you would then have to resubmit the app as an update to the App Store, and that usually takes about a day. So keep that in mind whenever you guys are updating your schedules. Or you can create a page that is linked to a website or a URL, where that would be updated as soon as you update it. So for instance, my standings, I don't have a separate page for standings. I have it linked to my standings URL, and then that way it gets updated in real time. My schedules are uploaded as a PDF just because I usually don't make many changes to the schedules. If I do, I make it, once in the middle of the season, and that gives me plenty of time to upload it to the app and then resubmit it as an update to the App Store. So that just gives me plenty of time, but you can do both.
Perfect. Any other questions? Okay. So there is more information for it. So again, at www.appyourself.net, the pricing and the business plan. And if you do have any other questions that you want to reach out to John, his contact information will be later in the slide that you can get down his email address. So thanks again, John, for sharing that with us. And hopefully some people can take advantage to make it a little easier at the fields and communicate with their participants.
No problem. Thanks.
Moving on, we'll let Stu take this part over. These are going to be some benefits for participating with and registering your teams for USA Softball at Metro Detroit. So Stu, do you want to take this over and go through some of these?
Yep, I'm going to go through some of these here fairly quick, but we like people to understand what we're doing here. With umpire training, I'm going to push this off here because John will be talking about that here in a few minutes, along with background checks and safe sport, which are huge, huge things that everyone is looking at nowadays. Denny Troshak will touch on that here in a few minutes. But with everything that's going on, especially everything in the state of Michigan, background checks are a huge benefit, as well as for safe sport, which some of you might not understand what safe sport is, but that was all done through the United States Olympic Committee. Ways to save money, softballs and kickballs. Scott Mercer will be touching on that here in a few minutes, where we can save your agency some money. Whether you are with USA Softball Metro Detroit or not, if you are with us, you'll get a slight discount, but Scott will go over that. Bat testing machine. Bat testing machine, we do have one here in the Metro Detroit area. There are some agencies that have purchased their own, such as I believe Novi has. West Bloomfield, I believe, has. Sterling Heights, I think, also purchased one too. But we have one that we would rent out, and it's only $50 for a full week or $25 just for one day. And believe it or not, if you show up at a site and you have a bat testing machine, you're going to see a lot of people walk up to the park and then walk right back to their car knowing that they have an illegal bat. And that if you want specific experience on that, get a hold of Greg Morris when he returns to Novi, because he's done that. So very worthwhile. Networking and support, whether you're with us or not, we're here to help support you. One of the biggest things is we will support suspensions that you have at that local level, as long as you follow the proper due process. We have one person here in the Metro Detroit area, which I will mention, that he is suspended indefinitely, and that is Brian Gordon. He participated, I believe, in some of the North Oakland County leagues. And USA Softball of Michigan just suspended also a person indefinitely, and his name is Nicholas Dallas. So if any of you know these people, you can honor those suspensions if you'd like, but know that either Metro Detroit or Michigan has gone through the due process in conducting a hearing, and that's why we have supported those suspensions. A player classification system. You can go on the national site and see how players are classified. We just had an email yesterday to reclassify a player. They can appeal their classifications if they'd like, and it goes through an appeal process. But you can go on the national site, look up any player, and see how they are actually rated in the system. We also have a field improvement grants, where at the beginning of January every year, if you are with USA Softball Metro Detroit, we will provide field improvement grants for your local agency. So it's a free program. Just fill out the application, and that is on our website also. Next page, that we are the only softball organization that supports concussion training. Obviously, everyone knows here that it's a requirement in Michigan for all of our programs, but not in all the different states. And USA Softball supports this concussion training at all levels. And as we mentioned before, an invaluable partnership is MParks. MParks is there for us, MParks is there for you, and we appreciate everything they have done throughout the years. Going now on to insurance very quickly here. One of the benefits that we have for players, and this was instituted, I believe, in 2018, is that if you register all of your adult teams with us, all the teams are going to have liability insurance included at no cost. And I can tell you what some of the other organizations are charging is upwards of $450 if a team wanted liability insurance. Our cost, $0. Benefits to field owners. If all of your teams register, you are now covered under a field owner's liability program. Once again, there's no cost for this. This used to be $300 in the past, but there is no cost. Other organizations right now, and we have the facts here, that they are charging anywhere from $725 all the way up to $2,500 for a field owner's policy. If you register with us, your cost is $0. And then one other thing we would like to make sure everybody is aware of, some of you might already know this, but this took place in late fall regarding insurance for other sports organizations. K&K, which provides sports organizations insurance under nationwide national casualty, is no longer going to provide sports insurance. K&K currently provides insurance, but this is what they did as of last fall, with NSA, PGF, UTRIP, Cal Ripken, and Babe Ruth. In addition to this, Gagliardi Insurance Agency, who also represents Pony, closed their doors last October in response to doing business with the fraudulent organization. We're only mentioning this to you because we want you to be aware of it. If any of these organizations are out there that utilize your fields, once again, whether you're USA Softball, NSA, UTRIP, just be aware that you are going to be covered for insurance if you're requiring them to provide that insurance. The next page there, this is pretty lengthy, but this is, and I'm not going to go through it all, but you can see these are all the various programs that are offered. And the key things that are on here is for youth organizations such as equipment, board of directors, insurance, crime insurance, and so forth. One of the things that USA Softball will also do is we can insure your baseball teams. We can register your baseball teams. You will still be covered for insurance. So that's in a quick nutshell as to where we're at on some of the benefits. And once again, we're here for you. If you have any questions, please let us know.
Perfect. Thank you, Stu. John, do you want to take over and describe a little bit about the umpire program, please?
Sure. The umpire program, USA Softball, formerly used to be ASA Softball, is the governing body for softball in the United States. One thing that makes us unique to everybody else is with our umpire program is we spend a lot of time training our umpires, making sure that they know the game, make sure that they are aware of the rules changes, mechanics, and so on. A lot of umpire organizations, a lot of umpires just go out and umpire. Okay, they're not a member of an organization. They just go out and umpire, and they don't have any protection for themselves, liability-wise, and that's not good. That's not good for your program, because your umpires don't have insurance, and guess what? It'll come back to you if there's somebody who gets hurt on the field because of something. And I've seen some really strange things happen that umpires get sued over when it really wasn't their fault, other than the fact that they were just doing a game or officiating a game. But we spend, like I say, we spend a lot of time with training and making sure our umpires understand the rules. This year, and that's the next bullet item, training is not as easy because we can't get a facility, and having face-to-face training is really hard to do. So we have gone to a virtual model, and we just kicked off to our registered umpires this week, where there's going to be about 20 modules. I'm sorry, 10 modules, 10 to 12 modules that each umpire will take online, and then he will get immediate feedback on whether he has the answer correct or not. And then I get notification that they took the test and they took the module, and this will then allow them, if there's any kind of tournaments being done, fast pitch or slow pitch in the area, we will only take umpires that have completed this training. Now, later on in April 11th and the 17th, I believe, are the dates. We are going to try, weather permitting, to go outside with some mechanics in Novi and in St. Clair Shores. Those dates will be sent out to everybody who's registered, and so on. But your umpires, if you're not registering your umpires, I strongly suggest that you get them registered, because they get the education, and we really spend a lot of time on education and teaching. And it is also, umpires will then have a resource too. If there's a rule question or any kind of issue that comes up, our staff can help with that. You can contact me or anybody on the staff, which is on the website, and on our USA Softball website. We can help you through with any kind of rule problems or game management problems, and so on. Also, being a registered USA Softball umpire, you can, if you have aspirations to improve your game, in other words, I've just been working in whatever community I'm working at, and I'd love to go travel and umpire in different communities in different states at a higher level. You can do that through USA Softball. I mean, we have umpires that come from Metro Detroit that do fast pitch games around the country for national high-level games. We also have slow pitch umpires that do men's ABC and D and rec games that are at a national level, believe it or not. Plus, we've sent some umpires to do armed forces games, and they've come from Detroit. So, you know, the sky's the limit depending on how much you want to spend and how much time you want to spend on learning the game. But they can also do WBSC certification, which would allow them to do international games. So there's a series of slow pitch games called the Border Battle that goes on every year that we also send umpires to, that United States plays against Canada at a high level. And if you want to do that, and if you have aspirations to do that, you know, USA Softball is the place to be. So, but you have to be part of the, you know, you have to be registered, and you have to go through the training process and so on. We also, for our communities, we also have a list of registered umpires. So if you do have an umpire that comes to you, or you're a signer and wants to know if there are umpires that are registered, you can do so by going to our webpage at usasoftballdetroit.org, and you go to the umpire section, and down at the bottom there's you can click on a place where you will see the registered umpires, the current registered umpires. It'll be updated shortly for 2021. It was updated last in July of 2020. So what you're seeing there is not for this year, but it'll be updated shortly. But then you can see if your umpires are registered or not. And if they're not, like I say, I would advise you to do the best you can to try to get them to register. We also try to recognize our umpires through different items, such as we have a yearly, of course we haven't had it last year, and I'm not sure what the dates are going to be this year yet because of COVID, but we have an awards breakfast where we give umpires awards, such as medals program. The USA Softball has where they recognize umpires for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and 20 years of service. Through the medals program, your name gets put on the national website. It's put on our website, of course. We also have a fraternity called NIF, National Indicator Fraternity, and you're automatically a member of that if you've done 3 or more national tournaments. Okay, and then you can also work for an elite, which is one of the highest awards we have, where you have worked 3 national tournaments, and you've got the highest ratings. And we have several umpires in Detroit that are elite umpires, which is something that you really don't see in other programs. Now, one of the slides that just came up was another thing you get. You can also check with your umpires to see. He's backing up to it, I think.
All right.
One more. There you go. There's a registration card. Oh, too much. There's a registration card that each umpire will get when they register. You can also ask to see that umpire registration card, which shows their ID information and so on. That's that comes automatically with your registration fee. But getting back to the awards breakfast, like I say, we have that every year. We feel it's important to notice and make public notice of our umpires that have achieved different levels, even at the recreation level where a lot of the guys work. We want to make sure that they all receive that recognition for their hard work. So that's kind of what we're about. We're about teaching. We're about having good umpires. We're about guys that are out there in uniform, that are, instead of being out there in white tennis shoes and a gray hoodie, they're out there they look like an umpire. You know, it's important to sell that to the teams. If you go out there looking like a slob, guess what? They're going to treat you that way. So we insist and expect our umpires to look good, to make sure their shoes are polished, make sure the uniform is clean, make sure that they are ready to go and everything else.
Yeah, perfect.
So,
thanks, John. Sorry to cut you off, but in lieu of time, we want to keep moving. But yeah, anybody that's listening in, our softball umpires are here to help you. So reach out to John if you need anything. For the next slides, if we can just make sure that we go through them fairly quickly here so we can get to the question and answers. So the next one, the background checks and safe sport. Is this Denny? You're muted, Denny, if you're talking.
There we go. Okay. Regarding background checks, if you'd have noticed the card that we just showed above on the umpire, there was a little check mark on the left-hand side that said background check. So those happen. We register when an umpire registers. Every umpire is background checked before they are approved. Also on that card, and John's is a little older in that, but on the newer ones now, if they have concussion certification that's still valid and they've taken safe sport, it will also show up on that card. The concussion shows up as a batting helmet with a white cross on it, and the safe sport will just indicate it on there. But we do require all our adults, all our umpires, to be background checked as long as they're 18 years of age. We can do a background check on a 17-year-old if we have parental permission to do that. But regarding other background checks, all our youth coaches that register through the individual registration program must be background checked, and concussion certification as well as safe sport trained before I will approve their team. Now, we have a lot of communities that register just to register the team and not individually. They have gone back and submitted their coaches on a spreadsheet to me, which I in turn send to the national office, and they create an invoice, and we can do background checks on them. It's $13 per coach. And usually once I get the sheet back, it's usually within a day or two. Once I go through and start the background check process, 99% of them are probably approved within 5 minutes. Every once in a while, there's one that has a hiccup because of an address, something like that. But the more information that you put down for the people, the easier it is. If you can do, they definitely have to have an email address. But when you're typing in the street address, if it's a drive or a street, make sure you put that in there as well. If you can add a driver's license, that's even better. They don't ask for social security numbers, so we're not looking at that. But again, not only have I had coaches or communities do coaches, but when they're when needing a background check on a future employee, I can do that as well. Again, the cost is only $13, and it comes back pretty quickly. It is a nationwide background check process, and it goes through a variety of different things, but it usually picks up things, anything from DUIs to a variety of different things, but not only operating cars, but also operating boats. So anytime someone's had a DUI, it usually clicks it up and it may suspend it for a little bit. If one is held for a long time, what normally would happen is Stu would get a notice saying that the following individual has not been cleared. Here is the reason why. Then we can contact that person to find out more information. And then we also have the choice of going through and approving them and then telling the national office to go ahead and approve it or not. Regarding Safe Sport, like Stu had mentioned, this was started a number of years ago, not a number of years, probably about 5 years ago with the USOC. And as USA Softball being a governing board member of the sport of softball for the United States, it has been implemented for them. And basically, it's a training process on how to recognize and prevent child abuse or sexual misconduct. It starts out with a 3-part process that you would take the first time through. It is free to anybody that is registered through USA Softball. So some of our umpires have to take it before they can do any youth games. Anybody that does a national tournament has to take it, but it's free. Other organizations have been starting to make their coaches and umpires take it, but they are charged $25. So there is a benefit for that. But basically, you take the 3-part series, which takes about an hour the first time through. And when it starts out, it'll ask you a bunch of questions. You give them your answers, and then you'll go through the videos, and then they will ask you those same 3 questions or the same questions at the end, and to see if your answers have changed or not. After you've taken the original 3, there's a refresher course each year. It deals with a different topic. This year we are in the 4th refresher course. So again, anybody that still wants to coach or umpire has to take that course before they're allowed to be approved. And again, being the governing body of softball, we are the ones that select any team that plays international play in softball has to come through USA Softball. The players for the slow pitch teams, the fast pitch teams, whether the Olympic teams or the men's national or 23 and under, any of those teams, the youth international teams, all are selected through USA Softball, and they all the coaches in that have to go through this process as well. Do I have any questions?
Thank you, Denny. Appreciate that.
I just want to do a quick thing for John. In regarding to the umpires, we had a session the other day nationally. If an umpire is registered with USA Softball and they happen to do high school softball or college softball, their insurance will cover them through USA Softball. And it not only covers if you're injured during the game, but it also covers you to and from the site that you are working. So if you're getting a car accident, it'll cover you. It's a lot better policy than what the high school offers you for sure. And actually, it's better than what NAFTA offers as well.
Yeah, it is a good program. Thank you, Denny, for reminding me of that.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. Last but not least, our softball kickball purchase program. Information is there. So Scott handles all the softballs. Kyle in Sterling Heights handles all the kickballs. Scott, do you want to briefly share anything else on the softball kickball purchase program?
Yeah, Chris, just real quick here. If you go to our website, you can see a list of pricing of the softballs. Right now, we have 3 different ones listed. We have the 52-300 synthetic, the 44-375 synthetic, and then the fast pitch ball. And you'll notice that there's price breaks at 13 dozen. We use this program to benefit our grant program. So we make about $2 per dozen. We take that money and put it right back into the communities through our grant program. We're all volunteers in the sport, so none of the money goes to us. Dudley offers us a price break at 13 dozen, so we pass that right on to our communities. If you are one of our communities, the price listed is the price for you. If you're not a Metro Detroit USA softball community, then there is a additional fee of $5 per dozen. We try to make it easy. You email me what you need. I'll confirm it with you. I'll send it in, and then with about 7 to 10 business days, you'll get your delivery of the softball. So if you have any questions regarding the program, please email me. But we have this program set up to benefit you. Obviously, if it's the best price you can find, we're more than happy to help you. Just give me an email.
Perfect. Thanks, Scott. So here's our contact information. So feel free to screenshot it. Many of you probably know us, so you can just reach out. But again, remember, if you are doing the CEUs, just send me a quick email when this is over, and I will send you the form as confirmation that you did attend. So I'll leave this up here for a few minutes. Moving on to just question and answer. We did have some questions that came in. One of the questions was regarding the electrostatic sprayer. I think it was John and Royal Oak who did that. Do you have a vendor, John, or a company that you would recommend for that that item?
Yes, they're called Liberty Sprayers. Let me see if I can pull them up real quick.
Thank you.
But
We'll
if you
give,
look up, but they're handheld. They are like the size of a electric drill. And they have a solution housing system on the bottom. And like I said, we use them in our classrooms right now, and we can spray a classroom down in 10 minutes, and it dries, and then ready for the next group of people to come through.
Perfect. So is
And
Liberty?
We went
Liberty.
through Allied Eagle. So Allied Eagle is another one that we got our sprayer from, and we're using a Clorox system.
Anybody else on the panel that has experience with sprayers or a company that does it?
If I will might add, you have to get special solution. I mean, you can use your typical, Clorox bleach that will run through it, but you have to get special electrifying solution for it. But it doesn't mean you can't use, your typical Clorox bleach. You just won't get the benefits of the electrostatic.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Next question came in, and it's in, excuse me, it's in regards to renting fields to outside organizations, and what is everybody doing in terms of enforcing the mask policy when renting fields to outside entities? So is it part of the contract that they follow through on that, or once they rent your fields, is it just turn your head and not pay attention to it? So anybody on the panel want to jump in on that piece of it?
In Sterling Heights, we are making them submit a mitigation plan. So what their intent is, then we have to approve that plan, such as masks, social distancing, no shared water coolers, stuff of that nature. And then once we approve it, then we issue the field permits, and we do have our field staff report back to us, because most people that rent more than once. So we get the report back on how they held up their end of their deal and go from there.
Perfect. Kirby, do you guys have staff that are out there during that period of time to oversee the rentals?
Yes, since all of our fields are locked up, we have to have staff to go out and unlock it. So we have the staff stay there, monitor the bathrooms. But their big job last year was just to keep an eye and report back. We don't make them go up and confront people, because that's just picking fights that we don't want them to get into. But they do keep an eye for us, and they're there before the rental starts and once the rental's done.
Perfect, thank you. Anyone else on the panel have any insight on this piece? Okay.
Chris, in Troy, we just made our youth organization submit the protocols they were going to follow, and it was their responsibility to enforce those policies for our youth soccer and youth baseball.
Perfect. I know I can speak from the travel standpoint. My daughter's team, we played in various communities this year, and it's a little sad that we were told, have to wear masks, have to do this, have to do that. And then we get to the facility and none of it's being enforced. So I think a lot of these softball tournaments that are being put on, they tell us what we need to hear, but once they get out onto the fields, it's just a free-for-all. So we experienced that quite a bit from a parent coach standpoint of it. So hopefully that's not happening in your guys' communities. So the last question that I had that came in was, for youth leagues, are you allowing teams to travel to other communities to play? I think this is more in reference to community teams. So my experience maybe with Chesterfield, New Baltimore, they combine their youth leagues. I don't know if that's what the basis of that question was, but are you guys, whether it's softball or soccer or basketball, are you allowing your teams from your community to travel to other communities to participate?
I can tell you that in Oxford, Chris, we are. because without that, I don't have a rec softball league. It's like us, Orion, Lapeer, whoever wants to join in. We're all lucky if we can get 1 or 2 teams in any particular age group. So we are doing some local travel for our rec league only because it's either that or not offer the program.
Which makes sense, absolutely. Anybody else?
Chris, for the city of Troy, we're combining with Clausen for a girls softball program. Last year was going to be our first year, obviously got canceled. So we've already chatted with them. They did run a small season in the fall last year, and they provided every player with a 5-gallon bucket with hand sanitizer and everything in it. So I've talked to them because we want to be on the same page. So we're going to provide each team with a bucket with hand sanitizer and disinfectant spray. But that's the scary part. With my 50 and over league, that was the fear of going to different communities and not having policies be the same. Whether Troy was lax compared to Farmington Hills, it's a tough one. So we've had a couple meetings with Clausen already to say, hey, we got to be on the same page. This is what we're going to enforce, and it needs to be consistent across the board. But it is a challenge when you start going down that road.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see making sure that you guys are on the same page, that they're not going to another community to be completely different. So, anybody else have anything else that they wanted to add on that question? Okay. I don't see any other questions that have come in. We did put in there about the Liberty sprayers, the website. So if you guys see that, one question just came in. Are rental groups sizes limited? So are you guys limiting the number of people possibly attending? I know at the middle school, high school level, inside attendance is only 2 people per player. Do you guys envision that you guys are going to have to limit the size of participants or spectators coming to your facilities?
In Sterling Heights, last summer we did whatever the state mandate was for an outing. We did consider each field its own outing instead of like our 4-field complex being one gathering. Each field was its own gathering. It's kind of the way we played that. And we plan to stick with that. So if it's limiting to 2 parents or 2 spectators or whatever we have to do, we would still limit as needed by state guidelines.
Thanks, Kirby. Anyone else on that? Okay. Yeah, I think a lot of it goes back to what the guidelines are. And, you know, it's funny that you say that, Kirby, regarding the fields, because I know there was some communities that took their whole complex and had that as the one area, and then obviously all the multiple fields to be able to get in those tournaments this summer was one of those hard parts. So so again, as we've said, we're all recreation professionals. We're here for you. We just want to be able to provide the best for all of our communities. So if you do have any questions or anything that you have that maybe wasn't answered today, feel free to email one of us, and we can send it out to our group. And again, it doesn't have to be softball related. It could just be facility or program related as well. So at that, I just want to thank everybody for coming today and being a part of it. Hopefully you're able to get some information out of it to take back to your communities. And if you haven't been able to run programming, that you'll be able to maybe take some of this information back and see that there are communities that are doing it. So at that, without any other questions, again, thank you for attending, and we'll hopefully see you guys all soon in person. So thank you again for attending.